Hello, and welcome to the 27th inning. I'm your host, Michael Grinnell, and today we will be hearing from a 22-year veteran of Major League Baseball, former pitcher Jerry Royce. From 1969 through 1990, Royce played for 8 different teams, but he spent the bulk of his career pitching for the Pirates and the Dodgers. A 2-time All-Star, the runner-up for the 1980 Cy Young Award, and a member of the 1981 World Series champion Dodgers, Royce finished his career with a 220 and 191 record, with a 3.64 ERA and 1,907 strikeouts, as he also ranks 57th all-time with 3,669 and 2/3 career innings pitched. Nowadays, you can find him up in the broadcast booth calling games for the Las Vegas Aviators. I spoke with him about his journey to the majors, some of the moments that still stick out to him from his career, and some of the things he has been up to since hanging up his glove for good. We'll be back in just a moment, and when we return, you'll hear from former pitcher Jerry Royce. We are here now with longtime former Major League Baseball pitcher Jerry Royce. Jerry, thank you for coming on to talk with us today.
You're welcome, Michael.
Let's start things off we'll go back to the beginning of your career. In 1967, you were drafted in the second round by your hometown St. Louis Cardinals. Talk a little bit about that moment, getting drafted by the hometown team, and did you ever really feel a lot of pressure having to live up to that high draft pick?
Well, I was surprised it was the Cardinals because during the time I played high school and American Legion ball, they were in the background. I knew the scouts because, well, for one, they're the Cardinals, but also I was teammates with the son of the farm director, George Sylvie, in high school. So I knew that there was a presence there. So when draft day came, I didn't know where I would be drafted. I did have a workout with Atlanta at the ballpark in 1967, just before the draft. So I thought that they would be a player as far as the draft was concerned. But when it came time for St. Louis to draft their second round, they opted for me. So the rest, I guess, is history.
So you're drafted by the Cardinals. Talk a little bit about what it was like back then for you, working your way up through the minor leagues before you made your debut with St. Louis.
Well, it was a series of events that took place. I was in the right place at the right time. After signing, I went to the Rookie League where I appeared in 2 games, and Ted Simmons and myself were, after a couple of games, sent to Class A ball in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Ted left for school early, I guess in mid-August, because both of us actually had to keep our military deferments. And for me, I spent the last week of the season in AAA in the Pacific Coast League, but I did get into school. And I spent the entire school year at Southern Illinois University, 67 and 68, joined the AA team in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I realized that playing a half a season wasn't going to get me to the big leagues any faster. So I had to make a decision and decided to join the Army Reserve. And I did in August of 1968. And that allowed me to stay out of the military draft. And also, it was taking a big chance because basic training could call at any time, meaning I could lose all or part of a season. But fortunately for me, that didn't come until an off season a year later. And I didn't lose any time due to Army duty. So working my way through, I had a full season in 1969 in Tulsa. And that was at the same time the Cardinals' fortunes, after being in the World Series 2 consecutive years in 67 and 68. It was the year of the Mets. It was the year of expansion. And a lot of players that were top minor league prospects in the Cardinals organization left the organization because of expansion, and that opened up a hole for me. Having a good AAA season allowed me to be a September call-up. So I made my appearance in the major leagues 27 months after I'd signed my first contract.
That seems pretty fast. You don't really see a lot of guys making that kind of a jump. And, looking at that first game that you had in 1969 was St. Louis major league debut. That was one heck of a performance you put up. 7 innings, no runs allowed, got the win over at Montreal. Talk a little bit about that very first game for you. What are your memories from that major league debut?
Well, it was cold and rainy Saturday afternoon, and since Montreal and the Cardinals were no longer in the pennant race late in September, it was the decision of Red Shadings and the coaches to give the rookies who had been with the club all month a chance to play in this particular series. So I was out there with mostly a rookie ball club, with the exception of Tim McCarver behind the plate, because Ted Simmons, who was in double A ball, triple A ball with the club, had joined an Army Reserve unit back in Michigan, and he had a reserve meeting that weekend. So it was cold, it was rainy, and we had 2 rain delays before Red said, get warming up a third time. I don't want to do that. You've already gone 7 innings. It's a pretty good day's work. So I'm going to put a few other guys in the ball game, and we'll see what happens. As it turned out, we won the game 2-1, and I had my first major league win.
Quite a start to a very long and successful career for you. The next few years, you played 1970 and 1971 with St. Louis, and then 72 and 73 with Houston. And basically, from that point on, you were in the rotation everywhere you went, like full time. So just talk a little bit about those first few years of your career with St. Louis and Houston.
Well, I did go into basic training in the winter of 69 and 1970. And fortunately for me, spring training started late that year. And when I got out of the advanced training part of basic, I joined the Cardinals farm club in spring training and was there long enough to get myself in shape and then go out and pitch for the Tulsa Oilers. And I was there a couple of months before I got the call up to St. Louis when they had a couple of double headers. So that's how I made it to the Cardinals in 70, played there in 71, traded in 72 and in 73. And then went to Pittsburgh in 74 and stayed there through 78. In early spring, I was traded to the Dodgers, spent 8 years there before I was released in 1987, and then played briefly for Cincinnati, the Angels, and then signed a deal with the White Sox for 88, played there through mid-89 when they traded me to Milwaukee. And then I finished my career in 1990 with the Pirates. And that covers, in a couple of sentences, 22 different seasons of Major League Baseball.
And that is something impressive that you just don't see a lot nowadays. Like that kind of longevity that out of a pitcher, like you were one of only a handful of pitchers to say that they pitched in 4 decades. Like, what would you say was the biggest key for you to be able to have such a long career?
Well, I was born at the right time. And I pitched 1 game in 1969 and 4 in 1990. To last a long time, well, there's been a lot of guys who have done that, but to bracket the bulk of your career between 2 different decades so that you become a 4-decade player, it's a bit of an anomaly, and it's just another asterisk that one could put by their name of things that were accomplished during a major league career. It's nice to be remembered. You can look it up on Wikipedia, the names of all who did play in 4 decades. So if one wants to make a statement about it or something, it's there for everybody to see.
So quickly from your first game of pro ball to make it to the majors nowadays.
Well, yeah, like I said, I was in the right place at the right time.
Going back to your first stint with Pittsburgh, talk a little bit about those years. You're part of some pretty good Pittsburgh teams back there in the 70s. talk a little bit about your memories of playing at Three Rivers Stadium. What were some of the highlights of Pittsburgh, memories of some of your teammates?
Well, Pittsburgh had a different approach to stocking their minor leagues, and that is to find the best athletes they could, the best hitters, and when they believed that these players were ready, they'd plug them into the major league lineup. Now, they admitted that they couldn't always find a position for them, but they found a place for them to play. And it was the Pirates' conjecture, and this was proven out, that if you score enough runs, then you can win a lot of ball games and go into the postseason. And if they had too many hitters, then they can make a decision on moving one or more of them in order to obtain more pitching. So it was their feeling that if you get a starting pitcher, Danny Murtaugh said this, you can give me 6 innings, you're going to win a lot of ball games here. So that was just their approach. And it seemed to work over what a lot of other organizations were doing. It was something that was novel and unique at the time, but it worked for Pittsburgh, and you got to give them credit because Joe Brown, the general manager, and Danny Murtaugh made it work.
Yeah, it certainly seems like they were a pretty dominant team back then. And then it ended up in 1979, your first year with the Dodgers. The Pirates ended up going all the way and winning the World Series that year. How did it feel to be able to see your teammates finally reach that success that they had been so close to the previous few years?
Well, there were a lot of changes after I left in 79, new people coming along, and they hit it right. It was a new regime with Chuck Tanner and as the manager and Harding Peterson as the GM, and they worked well together. Some players became available. The Pirates liked the possibility of adding these players, and it made a difference. They won the division, and then they went on to win the World Series. As far as I was concerned, I was happy. I felt no remorse. I didn't feel any anger. I was glad because these guys work hard, and we worked hard in the years that we played together. And finally, it came to fruition. But what softened everything a few years later was the fact that I got a chance to pitch in an all-star game in 1980 and win a World Series with the Dodgers in 1981. So all in all, they won, they got something, I won, and I got something.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that 1980 season next. You had quite the year there, 18-6. Finished second in the Cy Young race. You earned the win at the All-Star game and struck out the side in your inning of work. Talk a little bit about some of those big moments that you had in 1980.
Well, it was an adjustment. I started out in the bullpen, and things seemed to change for me. And when there was someone who couldn't make the start, Tom Lasorda promised me that he said, you'll be the first guy up if possible when someone goes down. And realistically, I've never known of any team to have the same 5 starters from start to finish. So it was just a matter of time before somebody couldn't make that start. And sometime in May, I don't remember the exact day, it's pretty close to about this time of year, I did get that start, did well. And as a result, I stayed in the starting rotation. Somebody else then had to wait for their turn to get their next start. So, for me, it worked out pretty well. And I got a ball of steam rolling and winning some ball games. And finally, it culminated in a no-hitter in late June and then being named the All-Star team, and continued after that throughout the season when we had a playoff with Houston the final week after the season. We played a playoff game. Houston won that. They went on to postseason. But for us as a team, it was a disappointment. For me, it was a big change as I went from somebody who had 3 years of struggling to someone who became, at that particular time, one of the most successful pitchers in baseball.
You mentioned that no-hitter on June 27th against the Giants. You came so close to a perfect game, if not for a throwing error in the first inning. Can you just take through your thoughts of that game and When did you realize what was going on? At what point did it start to sink in that you had held them without a hit?
Well, I knew I held him without a hit from the first pitch. Any pitcher who says he's not aware of that, I don't think is being honest. Now, as far as Russell's throwing error, it juggled the lineup because Jack Clark was the one who was the base runner and ended up injuring himself, and he had to come out of the game. Clark hit me pretty well, and that just set the tone for the rest of the game as I got a lot of routine outs right after that. So for me, missing a perfect game, yeah, it's one of those things that people like to write about, like to talk about. There's even been books written about perfect games. To me, I had, according to Leonard Coppett, who I really appreciate saying this, is that my no-hitter was better than a perfect game because I had to get 28 outs. So
that's very true.
I'll take that. Well, yeah, there's been 13 perfect games and one guy getting a no-hitter with the equivalent of 28 outs. That sets me aside from everybody else, and I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. So flash forward now to 1981, another good season for you and the Dodgers. And this time you guys go on the run all the way and take the World Series. You earned the win in Game 5 of the World Series. It was a heck of a pitcher's duel between you and Ron Guidry. Can you talk a little bit about that Game 5 World Series?
Yeah, Guidry had a run from the second inning through the first out in the seventh where he retired, and I hope I get this right, either 14 out of 15 or 15 out of 16 of the batters he faced, 8 coming by strikeouts. So Guidry was running on all cylinders. And then he hung a slider to Guerrero. 5 pitches later, he tried to sneak a fastball past Yeager. Both hit home runs. And that turned out to be the difference in the ball game and the difference in the World Series.
Can you talk about that Game 6, the final out? You guys are named World Series champions. Talk about feelings and emotions as you guys celebrated winning that World Series.
I was in the bullpen. I didn't get a chance to run on the field and rush into the pile. So I don't even think there was a pile, if I remember. I just remember walking from the bullpen, either in left center field through a runway. It was the Yankee pitchers who escorted us because I didn't know the way and showed us the way to the clubhouse. And they were very cordial, saying congratulations on a job well done. And then we made our way down to our clubhouse and celebrated.
Now, one of the questions that I wanted to know about, after you guys win the World Series, you, Jay Johnstone, Rick Monday, and Steve Yeager get together and sing a rendition of "We Are the Champions," the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. Talk a little bit about that come to be that you guys decided to go out and do that.
We won the World Series on a Wednesday, returned to Los Angeles on a Thursday. Friday, the Dodgers, Peter O'Malley, invited everybody in the organization to a party at the Stadium Club at Dodger Stadium. It was there where everybody had a chance to pose with a World Championship trophy and to celebrate everything. Speeches were made, and this came after a parade through downtown LA. Now, it says somewhere in the press clipping, 75 to 100,000 people were there to witness it. I didn't count them all, but during that time at the party, the PR part of the Dodgers came up to me and asked me if I'd like to be part of a group that appears on the TV show Fridays. And I said, sure, this sounds like fun. And the 3 other guys and myself that you mentioned went to appear on Fridays. After that appearance, Jay was on the phone outside the ABC studios to someone who offered us a chance to record the song "We Are the Champions." So we all said yes, and on Sunday morning, limos were sent to us, and we made our way into Capitol Recording Studios in Hollywood and cranked out "We Are the Champions" and "New York, New York." And on Monday, we appeared on the Carson show. We made sure we had choreography and appeared on the Carson show. It was a sight to behold. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So we did the show and then ended up that week appearing on every other talk show. I think Mike Douglas, Merv Griffin, and it ended on Saturday morning with an appearance on Solid Gold, the one that you can see on the internet. It comes up to me every so often. So that was the week that we were rock stars, and that's how that came about.
Sounds like that must have been a lot of fun for you guys going around and doing that.
Well, yeah, winning the World Series was a lot of fun, and we had a chance to have a parade where the fans got a chance to see what was going on. We were honored by the people in the Dodger organization, the city of Los Angeles. The focus of the baseball world was with the Dodgers. And then I compare that to what happened last year with the club when they won the World Series. They couldn't celebrate at home. They had to celebrate at a neutral field. And they didn't get a parade. They didn't have TV appearances. So they missed part of what it was like to be a world champion and a chance to share it with all the people of the city and all of the fans of the Dodgers who supported them so many years when they didn't win. Yes, it was a World Series championship, and the ring is the size of a belt buckle, but something was still missing because they didn't get the red carpet treatment that they deserved. We did. So I'm especially grateful for that.
Talk a little bit about some of the later years of your career, like you mentioned before, with the Reds, Angels, White Sox, Brewers, and then one last stint with Pittsburgh at the very end. Talk a little bit about some of your memories from those later years.
Well, players get older, injuries occur, and your ability to do the things that you did in your 20s, well, those kind of disappeared and evaporated through time. So I went to Cincinnati, didn't do well, got released. The Angels needed some pitching, and I spent the rest of the 87 season with them. They were in a rebuilding mode, and they had some kids coming up. Guys by the name, let's see, Chuck Finley had already been there, but Jim Abbott was waiting in the wings, and the Angels decided we've had too much veteran presence here. We're picking up a lot of cast-offs, and we want to start new. So the Angels weren't interested in me, but the White Sox were. And it was good for me because I ended up with a team that was, 32 games under 500, 19 and a half games off the pace, and I had a winning record. So that was a rebirth for me as far as my baseball career. The next year, as Jerry Reinsdorf had mentioned, he hoped that sometime during that year he could trade me to a contender so that he could get another prospect and reconsider the rebuilding process that he had in motion. So I went to the Brewers. Things didn't work out quite right. I wanted to finish my career off in a grand style, and I signed with Houston, but was released in mid-May, and then eventually signed on with Pittsburgh, pitched in AAA this in July, and then was the September call-up. So that's pretty much closes out the major league career.
So a couple more questions about your major league career before I ask you some questions about your since retiring. Who are some of the toughest batters that you ever had to face on the mound, like guys that were really difficult outs for you?
You know, I refer to retrosheet.org for that because there were a lot of guys who hit me well that were Hall of Famers, and some guys who hit me well that were of less renown. And yet, on the other hand, there were a lot of Hall of Famers that didn't hit me well. And predictably, some guys who had brief major league careers, they didn't do well against me either. So there's just no way I can answer that question as to who the best hitters were. you can look it up, as Casey Stengel once said, and Retro Sheet probably has the list. It's done alphabetically, and you can see the breakdowns of all the hitters, pretty much all the hitters I faced and how well they did against me. So I'll let you refer to that, and you can make that decision for yourself.
All right. And then spent most of your career playing in the National League. And as a pitcher in the National League, you have to go up to the plate and hit. And so I'm curious to see your opinion on the designated hitter rule, especially as there's been more talk in recent years about the possibility of that eventually expanding into the National League.
I haven't played a game in the major leagues in over 30 years. I haven't broadcast a major league game in 14 years. So I've really been away from all that's been done in the major leagues. And boy, there have been some changes. And there's a lot of attitudes toward a designated hitter, well, all the rules for that matter. And for me, at this point, I'm far enough away where I can look at it and not have a feeling one way or the other. You know, if they want to let pitchers hit, let them hit. If they want to have a designated hitter rule for all of baseball, that's fine too. Whatever way baseball decides to go, there's going to be a number of people who complain about it, whether they like to have the pitcher hit and there's too much change in baseball. And then on the other side, there are a lot of people that say, let's have a designated hitter and stay with those set of rules. So as far as that's concerned, either way works for me.
That's a good answer. All right, so now we move on to life after your playing career, your last game on the mound. And looking at your website, it looks like you've been up to quite a few things.
Yeah, I broadcast starting 1991 through 1993 with ESPN. When that ended, I worked for baseball game. What was that called? Baseball Game of the Week. It was the nightly thing, and it lasted a couple of years, and all three networks shared the number of games presented by Major League Baseball. So it gave me a chance to work with different play-by-play guys, and I did maybe a dozen games over 2 years for the baseball network. And then at the same time, I was doing games on the radio here in Las Vegas, and also did a number of games for the Arizona Fall League. So there were some other cable entities before it all became Fox that I did some college games. So I was broadcasting a lot of different games for a lot of different leagues for a number of years. Eventually I got a job with the Angels where I did the road games on TV from 1996 to 1998, then returned to Las Vegas to do some games. And then I decided to give coaching a try. I did that for 5 years. That was enough. And then my body just gave out on me, and then entered the broadcast field here locally and have been broadcasting games for the local AAA club, first the Las Vegas Stars, then they were the 51s, and currently they're the Aviators. And I've been broadcasting for them for, well, since 2005. So that means 16 years. And you could subtract last year, put an asterisk by it. And so I've been doing mostly home games here in Las Vegas.
All right. And then this is something that I've been looking forward to asking you a little bit about, that I saw you mentioned on your website, is that you do some sports photography. And I'm a big sports photographer myself. Like, I've served as the team photographer for some minor league teams. And so I would just love to hear a little bit about what got you into photography, and, you know, what are some of your moments from shooting baseball games?
Well, in 1988, wasn't sure whether I was going to play, and I decided that if I did, that I would take pictures of every place I played just to save the memories. And in thinking, I said, this was such a great idea. I only wish that I had done it years ago, back when I played games at Forbes Field and Shibe Park and Montreal's Jerry Park. I didn't do it. And if I have a regret about baseball, that would be it. But that's a minor thing. This time I decided to do it in 1988. And as it turns out, once I found a place where I could post my pictures, I did on Flickr, and you can still see them today. They were stadiums that are no longer in existence. So as a result, when people see them, they'll make a remark about it and tell me just how much they appreciate the picture, because they sat with a family member who's no longer with us and had some great memories of that ballpark and that sitting in that particular area. So taking those pictures, processing them, finding a place to post them and share them has brought thousands of people joy over the years that I've had them up. So, for me, it was at the start just a way to preserve the memories of where I played. But as it turns out, not only has it been memories for me, but also sharing for anybody who wants to take the time to look at the photos.
Well, that's really cool. So that was all of the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah, for anybody that wants to know more and hear in detail some of the stories, I put them in my book, which was published in 2014. It's called Bring in the Right-Hander. It's available through my website, jerryroyce.com, provide signed copies. And you could probably also get it. I don't know if it's still available at bookstores like Barnes and Noble, because I don't even know if there's a Barnes and Noble. And occasionally it comes available on sale on Amazon. You probably can get it for less there, but from me, you get it new, you get it inscribed. I've handled it. I'm the one that mails it to you. So give it some consideration. If you want to know more, it's all in the book.
Thank you very much, Jerry Royce.
Okay, Michael. Thank you. You take care.
And that will do it for this episode of the 27th Inning. Thanks again to Jerry for being on the show. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast for future episodes, and you can find the show now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. If you have suggestions for future guests you'd like to hear from, or questions that you'd like them to answer, you can send me a message on Twitter at Michael Grinnell. That's Michael, Grennell. Check back for next week's episode, where you'll hear from two-time Cy Young winner and 1985 World Series MVP, Brett Saberhagen. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.